Project 9 introduces the Vectorworks event and theater-specific tools. We'll be using those tools to create this very simple corporate event, press conference, company meeting. This is not meant to be an example of great design for these types of things. It's really just meant to introduce these tools. So feel free to change this up if you'd like to make it more complicated or to change the subject matter. You're more than welcome to do that. We won't actually be building anything this week. That'll be something that's different about this project. This is all made with built-in Vectorworks tools. So we'll talk about the staging tool and the lighting tools and some of the drapery tools, the seating tools, and use those to create this event. Let's get started by opening a new file in Vectorworks. We're going to use our course stationery. And the first thing we're going to do is change one of our settings. So if you go to Tools, Options, Vectorworks Preferences, 3D, under Render Mode, when changing from top to a 3D view, yours is probably now set to OpenGL. I'm going to change this to wireframe because we're going to be working inside a room, and if we leave it in OpenGL, every time we change to a front or a side view, we're going to be stuck seeing the walls, the outside wall of the room, which isn't super useful for us. So we're just going to leave this in wireframe for this particular project. You can always change it back later. So the first thing we're going to do is create the event space. You can think of this as a large ballroom or meeting room, that type of space. So we're going to create a 100-foot by 100-foot empty corporate meeting room, basically. So if you use the rectangle tool to draw a 100-foot square, put it in by its center, right there. I'm gonna set this to a neutral gray carpet, basically, 60% gray, and then extrude it -1 inch. And then we'll draw some walls. So we'll use the wall tool. We can leave this set to its default of 6 inches, and we'll just draw a wall all the way around the space. We're going to want to change the height of this to 25 feet. There's a room this size, a 100-foot square room, is going to have tall walls. And then finally, we want to draw a ceiling. So we'll draw another rectangle here and do an extrude. We can extrude that 6 inches and then go to front and grab the ceiling and put it on top. There's our room. Now seems like a good time to save the file. Verts Project 9. We'll start by creating the stagings. So we're going to go to the event design toolset, and we're going to be using most of these tools today. And we'll start with the stage deck. So I'm just going to double click on that. That will bring up the stage deck dialog box. It defaults to a simple 4-foot by 8-foot by 4-foot tall platform. And I'm going to change the height of this to 24 inches and leave everything else the same for right now. So I'm going to click OK. Let that think for a minute. And there is our platform. If you look at this, you can see that it's a platform with legs, basically. You have several different options, and what we're going to use, rather than the basic legs, there's also the braced version There's a folding version. You can get just the deck. What we're going to use is the border, which is the platform that has sides on it. And these would, in reality, probably be fabric sides of skirting, but in this version, it just creates a solid rectangle. So we're going to lay out this stage that is 3 platforms wide by 3 platforms deep. So I'm going to duplicate this and put it here, and then duplicate again. You know, I said 3, but I think it's actually, yeah, it is 3. Okay. And then duplicate all 3 of those and put them here, and then one more time and put them there. So there is our platform, and I'm going to place it right the down stage, which is the part closest for the audience. For those of you who may not be theater majors, the downstage edge of it, the center of it, right at the center of the page, which is also the center of the room. Now it seems like a good time to go ahead and create a perspective view. This may not be the one that we end up finally using, but I'm going to go ahead and put a RenderWorks camera in here on center, about right there, and then activate that camera view. And so there we can see, if I go ahead and put this in OpenGL, there's our stage on our floor in our room. So I'm going to save this view as initial perspective. Can perhaps see why I don't teach English. Okay, so now we have our platform. It would be nice for the people who are going to speak to be able to actually get to the platform. So in order to do that, we need to put in some stairs. So fortunately, there's a stage steps tool. So we're going to use that. We're going to click here and then rotate. I'm going to hold down Shift so that it's in the right orientation. And then we're going to make some entries here. So our stage height was 24 inches. The stringer length is this length here. I'm going to skip that for a second and go to the type of stairs. Actually, let me just go ahead and click OK so I can show you what these look like. So if we go into isometric there, so this is the self-adjusting structure. This is the freestanding structure, solid, which is what we want, just solid stairs, open, so you can have different types. We just want solid, and we only need 3 steps. 6, 12, 18, 24. So there's 6-inch steps. And then we're gonna go ahead and add a railing on the left and the right of those steps. And if we go to the top, we can use the mirror tool to put steps on the other side. And if we go to our perspective, there's what we have so far. So far we've used the stage deck tool, we've used the stage steps tool. I'm not going to use the stage ramp tool, but it works exactly the same way as the stage steps, except that it creates ramps instead of stairs. The stage plug tool lets you create custom shapes. So you'll notice that it has the same tools here as the polygon tool. So you can really create any shape you want. We don't particularly need a shape, but just because I want us to use this tool, we're going to create a little triangular thrust on the front of the stage. So I'm going to draw a line here, tab 48 inches, just so I have a guide. And then I'm going to go back to the stage plug tool using the first mode, the corner vertex mode, and I'm just going to start in the center of this platform and come down to this point and over to here, and then back over to there. And as soon as that closes, it will pop up and ask you some questions. It's going to ask the stage height, which is 24. We want it to match the others. The structure, we want it to be a border structure, which is the same as the stage we already built. And we can leave everything else the same. So there's our little thrust. And then I'm going to select and delete the line that I just drew. So really you can use the stage plug tool to create any shape that you need that's not a rectangle, or the stage deck tool will create also round or half round, really, platforms. So if you need a rectangle or a square or a round, you can use the regular stage deck tool. If you need any other shape, you can draw a custom shape using the stage plug tool. So there is our, oops, that's why I changed that to wireframe initially. Let me go inside the room. There is our completed stage structure. I should point out at this point that if you want the stage to be something other than black, you'll notice that color texture here, you don't have any option to change. But if you go into 3D options, you can either set it to black or give it a custom texture. And you can use any texture that is available, or if you wanted it to be just a custom color, what you would do is create a texture that's just a solid color, and then choose custom texture here for the deck, or also the border, and select the texture that you created, the solid color texture here. So you can really have it multiple options on what the color is, but I'm just going to leave ours black. So we've created our stage structure. I'm going to go back to top. The next thing we're going to do is insert a curtain. This is pretty common when you are creating something like this in a large ballroom space. Often you don't need the whole space, so frequently you will curtain off part of the space. So we're going to use the Softgood tool to create a curtain. And you'll notice that it has the same drawing parameters that the stage plug did. You can really draw any shape. We're really going to draw a straight line. So we'll use the first mode, but just be aware that you can really draw any shape you want. So I'm going to draw a line here. I'm going to tab. We're going to do 80 feet worth of curtain, and then return, hold down Shift, and click twice. And then it will pop up and ask you some questions. Yours probably says 10 feet. That's the default. Mine's left over from creating this previously, but you want to change it to 20 feet. And then the pleat width, I don't know why this defaults to 2 feet, because a stock pleat width is 12 inches or 1 foot. So we're going to change that to the stock. You can leave everything else the same and click OK, and it will think for a moment and then give you this wavy line in 2D, or in 3D it is in fact a pleated curtain. It's as curtains are. It's flat at the top and then sort of wavy at the bottom, because the pleats open as they go down the curtain. So there is the curtain. I'm going to line this up and then show you some options. So I'd like to grab this by its center, but you'll notice it's not showing me a center point. It's showing me all of the individual points of the curve. So in order to override that for a moment, I'm going to click Simple 2D, and it's going to think for a second. Some of these tools are slow, and it simplifies it to just a line, and then with the line I get the common points I would expect. I get a center point and endpoints. So I'm going to grab it by its midpoint and align it to the midpoint of the platform here, and then move it 8 feet upstage. And then I'm going to go ahead and change it back from simple 2D to, I guess, complicated 2D. If we look at this in isometric, you can see that you have a couple of different functions. It defaults to be a curtain, but you could also have it be a pipe and drape, which it will, in case you don't know what pipe and drape is, it's metal stands that have metal rods across the top, and you hang the drapes from them. I'm sure you've all seen these at some point at conventions or something. But so that's pipe and drape. I'm assuming that this drape we're hanging from the ceiling somehow, so it's not going to be a pipe and drape. You can also set it to be a border, which would be an overhead drapery. And the only thing that really is going to be different there is depending on how you have some things set in classes, you can have it. It's not showing now, but you can have a dashed line indicating overhead drapery. But other than that, it's exactly the same as regular drapery. It's just in a different place. But I'm going to go ahead and tell this that it's a curtain. And in the same way, you can adjust the color options and things with the platforms in 3D. That's what you do with the curtain as well. You go into 3D curtain options, and this is where you can tell it that it's either opaque, you can't see through it, or it's a scrim, so you can partially see through it, or you can set it to custom. You actually do have the regular color choices here, or if you set it to custom, you can you get texture options here. So I'm just going to leave this as an opaque black curtain. So there's our curtain. And you can see in OpenGL that it looks like a pleated curtain. Back to top. Next, we're going to put in some seating. We'll be using the seating section tool for that, and there are two ways of doing this. You can select the seating section tool and then draw a shape with that tool, or you can create a shape first and using the paint bucket tool, basically pour seats into the shape. So we're going to do that. We're going to go to the rectangle tool, and we're going to draw a rectangle that is 40 feet wide by 30 feet tall. I'm going to insert it by its center, put it right there, and then I'm going to move it 4 feet away from the front edge of the stage. Okay, so there's step one. Step two, we're going to go to the seating section. We're going to use the first mode, the create from shape mode, and then we're going to click once on the shape, and then at the bottom, and then at the top. That lets it know which direction the seats should be facing. And then it pops up with these seats. You can we're not going to see a lot of difference here because it's all this offset rows. You can see that it offsets the seats so that this helps viewing, so that each row is offset from the center row, so you're looking between the people sitting in front of you, not directly behind the people sitting in front of you. You can choose down here any really you can choose any symbol. What makes the most sense is to choose a chair. I'm just going to leave these chairs, but you can you can choose any of the chairs that are available in Vectorworks. If you have lots of options here, you can angle the seating. You can set up chairs in different classes. So feel free to look around this tool. But for right now, we're just going to leave this like it is. So there's our seating. I'd like to have a center aisle. So I'm going to draw a rectangle. I want a 4 foot wide aisle, 4 feet by 30 inches. I'm going to put it right here. And then I'm going to use the aisle tool in the same mode 1, and I'm going to click on my rectangle, and you'll notice that it removes the seats where the aisle is. So that's pretty handy. I don't, however, want this rectangle to show, so I'm going to go down to my newly automatically created class of seating and see that I have a seating class. There's a seating layout class, which is set to be off. So I'm going to put the aisle into the seating layout class, which will turn it off. It still is there creating the aisle, but it is now off. So there is our seating. If we look at this from the side, you'll see there the chairs are. So that's pretty simple. These particular chairs, as you might have noticed, are blue. So I'm not fond of the blue chairs, so I'm going to edit. Actually, I take that back. I'm going to change the color, but because things have been classed properly with these chairs. So let's go to the initial perspective view. Now you'll notice in this view the chairs are not on because I created this view before I inserted the chairs, so I need to turn the seating. Sorry, I need to turn the chairs on. I need to turn on furnishings. Because whoever built this classed them properly. There, you'll notice there's a chair cloth and a chair metal class. So if I just edit the chair cloth class and change it from blue to something more reasonable, like 60% gray, it will change the color there. I also could have gone in and edited the symbol itself. So either way would have worked. But what I did here was just edit the class that the chairs were in. Now that we have our stage and our curtain and our audience, we're going to put in the lighting. And in order to do that, we need to hang some truss. So fortunately, there is a truss tool in the rigging tool set. We have all of the sorts of things that you use to hang things. So we can insert truss, we can insert lighting pipes, we can put in lifts, we can put in hoists. I'm not going to use any of these tools because this is frankly the subject of a different class. This is a stage engineering class. But for those of you who might need these, just be aware that the stuff is all here. So we're going to insert truss. We're also just for those of you who are lighting designers, we're going to insert a lighting pipe. So we're going to put truss over the stage, and in reality, there would only be truss. There would be any place that you wanted to hang lights in the ballroom or conference room, you would need to hang truss. But just so that I can show you how to use a lighting pipe, we're going to put a lighting pipe in out here. So this is pretty simple. You just draw a shape, really any shape, with the tool, and it will turn into a lighting pipe. I'm going to use the line insertion mode and draw a pipe right here. So I'm going to click there, hold down Shift, click over here. Actually, let's tab. Let's just do a standard 40 foot. So return, hold down Shift there. And when you're done with that, it will ask you some questions. You can tell it the type of line. I want a double line. That's referring to the line here. I'll show you that in a second. When it renders, whether you want it to render as round or square or hexagonal, I'm going to leave everything else the same here and just click OK. And so there's our lighting pipe. So back to this for a second. So the single line is there. The double line is there. These are tick marks. You can have none, or you can have variety of different types. The reason you want these is because there's generally standard lighting spacing. 18 inches apart is the standard, and so this defaults to putting a tick mark every 18 inches so that you know so that you have a guide when you're hanging the lights. I'm moving this, by the way, so that the center of the pipe is centered here, so that you have a guide to hang the lights. You can have the tick marks be a custom width apart. So there are a variety of settings here for the lighting pipe, and then you can give it a height in the Z here. So I'm going to make this 18 feet tall, which won't change anything in plan view, but if we go to side view, you can see that it's now 18 feet above the ground. Let's see if there are any other. Yeah, that's. And here's something that frequently confuses people, and I have to be honest, it for a long time confused me too. So this is a lighting pipe, and you can hang lights on this, but for lighting paperwork purposes, once you've created the pipe and have it the way you want it, you generally want to convert it into a lighting hanging position. So in Spotlight, Object Conversion, Convert to Hanging Position. And I'm going to call this FOH, Front of House Pipe. And you can either create a symbol or you can use the geometry. Since we're only going to have this one pipe in our drawing, I'm just going to use the geometry as it is. But if I wanted to have multiple pipes that were the same, I could create a symbol and then duplicate them, and it would use the same geometry, but you could name them different things. But I'm just going to use the geometry. And you'll notice that now this has changed from being a lighting pipe to being in a hanging position, and I have a whole lot fewer options, but different options. Once you change the pipe to a hanging position, you no longer have most of the physical attributes of the pipe itself. You notice I can no longer change it from a single line to double line. I can no longer change the tick marks. So the physical attributes have to be set before you change it to a hanging position. But now I do have hanging position options like automatically numbering the lights or things like that. So the hanging position has different parameters than the pipe. So the hanging position is made up of a pipe, but the lighting pipe and the lighting hanging position are in fact two different things. And you can hang lights on a lighting pipe that has not been converted into a hanging position. You just don't have the hanging position attributes like auto numbering and things. So hopefully that makes sense. So this is our front of house lighting pipe. So then over the stage, we're going to insert some truss. So we're going to go back to the event tool set. I totally lied. No, we're not. We're going to stay in the rigging tool set where we just were with the lighting pipe, and we're going to insert truss. So we're going to use the insert truss tool, and when you use the insert truss tool, there's also a just draw truss tool, which it works similarly to the draw lighting pipe tool, except instead of drawing a pipe, it draws truss. But rather than do that, I'm going to use the one that's more commonly used, which is insert truss. And when you do that, you have to select the truss that you're inserting. It comes from symbols in Vectorworks. Hopefully you all have these symbols. I know we've had some issues with me having symbols you don't have, but these should be in the standard Vectorworks library. So if you select here, we're going to insert Eurotruss 34, and we're going to start with FD34 straight. So if you click there, so the one we want is straight truss, Eurotruss, 290 by 290 by 3000. Those are millimeters, so 3 meter long truss. Double click there. Then I'm going to go ahead and center this top center right there at the back of the stage. So now to add more truss, you can use the truss insertion tool again, or you can use Option drag, or what is it on Windows, Command, I think. But if you hold down Option and drag, and you'll see that there's a red line there. So if I can just release now, and it will insert the truss over there, because that's where the logical place for it to go would be. Or if I hold down Option and drag in the other direction, it will insert truss there. So either way is fine. So what we want to do is create a 9-meter long run of truss. If we look at this in isometric, there's what we have. There's our truss. In plan view, you can, if you look at rigging truss, you can turn simplified on or off, and it will show this is the simplified version and this is the unsimplified version. So you can show it either way. I'm going to leave it unsimplified for now. So now that we've created our 9-meter long run of truss, we need to put some corners in. So I'm going to go back to the Insert Truss tool, back to Euro Truss, back to FD34, corners. And I want the very first sort of normal corner here, FD34 L90. So it's a 90-degree L. Double click on that. Any of these options are fine. And then if I hover over the end of the truss, you'll see there's this red line that will change, and this indicates the direction of the L. So I want it that way. So I'm just going to click there, and then I'll do the same thing down here. We'll click there. So there are my L's. Then I'm going to go back and to insert truss again, back to my straight truss. And now that I have this truss in the document, I can go to your project, and you'll see that all of the things, all of the symbols that are in the document are here. So it's easier to find this now. So it's this truss, the FD3430 that we previously inserted. So we want that there, and then we can select all of these plus the ends and use the mirror tool, hopefully, to do that. It'll ask you to change the name of the truss system here. We're not dealing with truss system names, so just click OK. What we're doing here is creating truss for rendering purposes. If you were the person, if you were the engineer who was laying out the truss, there's lots of other information that you would deal with, including naming the different systems, but we're not dealing with that. So here is all of the truss, which right now is sitting on the ground. We want to put it in the air. If I select one of these and then do select system objects, it will select all of the truss that's connected together. And then I can change the Z. We're going to change this to 18 feet. And I can convert this to a hanging position now. And you can either create a hanging position for each individual piece of truss, which I don't want to do. That's why I'm converting it to a hanging position. Or I can create a single hanging position from all the selected objects. This doesn't really change anything in the rendering. This is really for lighting paperwork purposes, to let whoever's looking at the paperwork know that all of the lights that are on this truss are to be considered part of the same system. And I want to create a single hanging position from all the selected objects. So I don't want each individual piece of truss to be a hanging position. I want the whole truss system to be one hanging position. So if I say OK, we're going to call this overhead truss. We want to use the geometry, not create a symbol. And now you'll see that this is a hanging position, and we have their name here, overhead truss, which I'm going to move off to the side. I should have mentioned that when we created the front of house pipe hanging position, it added a name to it. And for the pipes, it always adds it off to the right side. For truss, it sort of depends on what the configuration of the truss is. But now we have a hanging position over the stage created from truss that is ready to accept the lights and the speakers and the LED screen. Back to top. Next, we're going to put in the LED screen. So we're going to go back to the event toolbox, and down at the bottom here we have LED screen. I click that, and for right now we'll just put this right here, and then it will bring up our properties. LED screens are usually made up of modules. Whenever you see those big LED screens, they're usually made up of lots of little tiny LED screens, or not tiny, but this is what this dimension here is referring to, is the size of the module. We're going to use 12-inch square modules. We want to build the array based on modules counts and spacing. So what we want are 20 horizontal modules and 12 vertical modules. So our screen is going to be 20 feet wide by 12 feet tall. The spacing is equal to the module, so they're right next to each other. Pixels per module doesn't change anything in the rendering. This is just for paperwork purposes. Obviously, 1 pixel per 12-inch module would be a super blurry screen. So this is probably going to be, 50 or something, but it doesn't change anything for us. So we're just going to leave this, but just be aware that if you're designing LED screens and want the paperwork to reflect the actual pixel depth of the screen, this is where you would change it. You can tilt the screen forwards and backwards. You have a variety of different options here, but we're just gonna leave the rest of those the same. So 12 inches by 12 inches modules. There are 20 wide and 12 tall, and everything else we're leaving the same. So you click OK, you'll see how that changes. We're going to grab this by its center and put it right there. We're basically hanging it from the truss. And then if we go to front view, you'll see that it is hanging right from the truss. I actually want it lower than that, and the way we adjust that is with the Z. You'll notice the Z says 6 feet. So what? It's 18 feet, right? Well, the Z for these refers to the bottom. So right now it's 6 feet off the ground. I'm going to change it so that it's 4 feet off the ground, 48 inches. So it's sort of hanging down from the truss 2 feet. So there is our LED screen. Whoa. If we look at this in perspective, remember to turn the chairs back on. This is what we have so far. I'm going to go ahead and look at this in OpenGL, and you'll see that what's projected on the LED screen is the Vectorworks logo, which is not what I want. So if I select that, there's a button that says Edit Array Image. So if I click on that, I'm not sure what you'll get. What I get is this. I'm going to click Do Not Import This Texture. Use this one. And basically it brings up a dialog box where you can choose a texture to put in to use as the image. I'm going to keep the Vectorworks logo texture, I'm just going to change the texture. So I'm going to go to Resource Manager and Home and find the Vectorworks logo, right click on it, and change the image by importing a new image. You're welcome to use the library, you're welcome to use whatever image you want here. So you don't have to worry about the size. You'll notice this says 1 inch. It automatic, because this is being used as a texture on the screen, it automatically sizes it. You do have to worry about the aspect ratio, but you don't have to worry about the actual size. So we're going to click OK there, and now we should have that. So there is our completed LED screen with an image on it. In Edit Array Image, you also can select an actual video source if you're going to send this out to Vision, which is the actual lighting pre-visualization software from Vectorworks. You can have it actually running video. You can't do that in Vectorworks. Vectorworks only deals with stills, not with video. But I digress. Okay, so there is our video. Back to top. Now that we have the video screen in, we're going to insert some speakers. So if we go over to Speaker Array, just gonna double click so that I get the object info, and I want to configure the array. The bumper is the piece on top the speakers actually hang from. So we're going to use a generic 2x2. And I will tell you, I'm not a sound designer. I'm completely making this up based on what this looks like, not what it sounds like. So just FYI. There are a couple of you in class who actually are sound people. So pay attention to the method, pay no attention to the actual speaker arrangement. So that's the bumper, and then next you can put in different types of speakers. I'm just going to put in 3 of the same speaker, and because I've actually heard of Yamaha, I'm going to use the Yamaha, and it seems like it should be turned sideways to me. So there's the speaker. So I have a bumper and a speaker. I could add 2 other types of speakers if I wanted to, but I'm just going to skip right to array, and I'm going to select from this column. This would be the list of things that I've put in. I'm going to select the bumper and add it to the list here, and then I'm going to select the Yamaha and add it 3 times. So I have 3 of the same speaker. Then in order to have these angle the way they do, if you've ever paid attention at a concert, I'm going to type in 10 degrees here. You'll see what happened. It went up 10 degrees there. I'm just going to make all of these 10 degrees so that it resembles a standard line array. If you had different types of speakers here, you could mix and match. You could put them in the way that they should be. But like I said, I'm just concerned about what this looks like, not what it sounds like. So there's our speaker array. I'm going to click OK. Everything else can stay the same. There are all sorts of options here that you can play with. Feel free to take a look at them. I'm going to click OK. It's going to think for a minute. And there we have it. So then I'm going to grab that and hang it. You'll notice when I hover over the truss, I get the sort of red, it's okay to hang here hint. So I'm just going to hang it right there. And then I'm going to look at this from the left and see that it is hanging from the bottom of the truss, but it is, where are the speakers? Well, it's because once I do that, I need to populate the array. So there is the array. If we look at this from the front, there's our speaker. So I'm going to go back to top, and I'm just going to use the mirror tool to mirror across and put the other one there. for those of you who are not lighting designers, I should point out that the convention in these drawings is that even though things are hanging physically underneath the truss, the way lighting plots and speaker plots are drawn, the objects are shown on top of the pipe or on top of the truss. It's what's called a reflected plan. It's as if you put a giant mirror on the floor and you're drawing what you see in the reflection. So this pipe is shown underneath the object, even though it's actually on top of the object. And that's mostly just for clarity. That way the pipe is not passing through the object. So back to front for a second, and we'll see that one, two things. When I mirrored it over, it actually didn't place it under the truss where it's supposed to be. So I'm going to grab it and move it down, and you'll see the little red line when you're looking for the red line. So that now it's under the truss. That's step one. And step two, I need to populate the array. So there's our populated array. So there's our speakers. So almost the last thing to install is our lighting. So we're going to go to the lighting tab. This lighting is different than all of the lighting that we've been using so far in class this semester. These are actual stage lights. We've been using lights that simulated the sun or lights that simulated a bare bulb, but we're actually going to put in symbols for actual lighting now using this tool, the lighting instrument tool. This works very much like the truss tool. You select the lighting instrument tool and then you pick the light that you want. And hopefully you all have Martin moving lights. We're looking for, and I just randomly decided to use these. UCF actually owns these, so it seemed like a good choice. But we're looking for Martin lighting moving lights, and we're using the Mac Quantum profiles. I'm going to double click on that. And the way this works is you hover over where you want to put the light. So I am hovering over the bottom center of the truss here, and I'm looking for the red symbol, and I'm going to click once, and then holding that shift, I'm going to rotate the light so that it's going in the right direction, which is like that. And oops, that was actually backwards. Well, let's try that again. Sometimes it's hard to tell which direction they're going in. So that actually is facing, no, now it's backwards again. So I'm going to hover over either the top or the bottom. Because this is truss, you can't really hang in the middle. You have to either hang from one of the cords of the truss. So I'm going to hover over the bottom, click, and then hold down shift and rotate so that the light is facing in the right direction. So there's light number one. So I'm going to hang that there. I'm going to hang another one. So in reality, what you typically do is stagger these so that every other one is hung on every other side of the truss, just so the truss doesn't torque. So I'm going to put this one here, and then this one here. We're going to spread these out in a second. And then one here, and one here. Okay. Then I'm going to take these three and align them. Actually, let's just align all of these to space them out evenly. So we're going to distribute them by spacing. We don't need to align them at all. So there's that, and then we can take these four and use the mirror tool to mirror them across to the other side. And when I look at these from the left, I'm going to discover that some of these are hanging from the bottom of the truss. The mirrored ones are not. They're still selected. So I'm going to grab all of those and move them down so that they're underneath the truss. I am unclear why it, when you mirror something, it doesn't put it at the right height. It seems like there should be a reason, but anyway, so I'm going to move these down so that they're all at the same height. Now I can grab all of these and we're going to mirror them to the front. So we'll use the mirror tool. The center of the truss is hidden under the speakers, so I'm just going to mirror them across the center of the platform and then move them back so they're actually on the truss where they belong. So let's look at that from the left, and we'll find out that, yes, of course, some of them are not underneath. So there's 1, 2, 3. All right, so now they're all under the truss where they belong. And then the last of the lighting installation, I'm going to hang a couple of front lights. Back to lighting instrument, back to here. We're going to go to ETC, which is a standard non-moving light brand, ETC source 4. I'm going to hang ETC source 4 19 degrees, so double click. So we're going to put one right on center and one here at the end and another here at, so it's 3 ticks in from the end. 1, 2, 3, right there. So those are our lights. Before we finish up the lighting, I guess we should actually have something to light. So let's go to the Resource Manager and do a search for Podium. And hopefully you guys all have Lectern 3. I'm going to double click on that. We'll put it right here, I think. It's a double click. Shift to left and lift it up so that it's sitting on the stage. And then we're going to edit that. So we're going to double click and edit the 3D component. Oh, I've already edited mine, I guess. Yours is going to be blue here. It's one of the strangest color combinations I've ever seen. So if you double click on that and select this piece, if you like the blue, then by all means leave the blue, but it seemed like a really weird choice to me, so I just made it sort of more of this gold color, but you're welcome to make it whatever color you want. So there's the podium, and then if we have a podium, we should have a speaker, so we're going to use one of Vectorworks' truly awful 3D people. I'm going to search for female. You're welcome to put in whichever of the people, male, female, whichever. 26. Let's do 26. I think that's the one I used before, but like I said, you're welcome to use any of them. Double click on that. Click to insert. She's actually walking, so I'm going to rotate her a little bit so that she's more standing straight. We'll put her behind the podium. Switch to left. Make sure she's up. There are better sources for people than Vectorworks. You can sometimes get good 3D people in the SketchUp warehouse, which are free. There are places that you can purchase them. The female figure that was in the very first file I sent you guys with the test render, it was purchased from a UK-based company that does realistic 3D figures. There are all sorts of places to get 3D figures. We're just going to use the one that's in Vectorworks because it's in Vectorworks, and this project is about using the things that are built into Vectorworks. But be aware that their figures are not the best. Okay, so now we have the podium, we have the figure. We need to point the lights at the figure. She's going to be the most well-lit speaker ever because we're going to point all of the lights at her. So in order to do that, we need to insert a focus point, which is just a point that allows you to focus lights at it. So we're going to click once right at her. They'll automatically start numbering themselves or start lettering themselves with A. If I was to insert another one, it would be B. And it will default to 5 feet, which is sort of the height above the floor where you usually focus the light. I've already changed mine to 7, which takes the 5 feet and adds the 2 foot tall stage to it. So you want it to be 7 feet. Unless you have a particularly tall person, then you might want to go up to 8 feet. But so there's our focus point. The focus points, even though they are just disks, I may have said this in another project, will show up in the rendering if they're there. They look like frisbees floating in air. So I'm going to put this in. There's a lighting focus point class so that we can turn them off when we get to the rendering. So there's A. So we're going to point all of the lights. Well, let's just select them all first. We're going to point 4 of them in a different place, but select them all. So there's all the lights. There is all the lights. And if we look at this from top, you can see that they're all pointed in their neutral positions. But if we, with them all selected, if we go over to Object Info, scroll to the bottom, and where it says Focus, if you just type in A, then you'll see that they all rotate so that now they're actually pointing at the figure. For those of you who are lighting designers, you may want to be aware of the draw beam. It's like crazy art. The draw beam function, which shows the actual, I told you she was going to be very well lit, shows the actual beams and where they're pointed. We're going to take 4 of these beams, the 4 beams that are actually visible in the rendering, and point them at her feet rather than where they are now, because right now they're spread out really wide, and we don't actually need all of these lights lighting her, because that's silly. So we're gonna duplicate A, and you'll notice it automatically turns to B, and then change the height of it to 0. And then we're gonna take these 4 lights, and just so you can see what's going on. Okay, so here's the beam. Go to the front. We're going to change this from A to B. And you'll see that now they're pointing. They're still pointed at her, but they're pointed much lower. So far so good with the lighting. I'm going to turn this off. Turn this off. The next thing we want to do is number the lights so that we can control them. Here's the visualization palette, which lets you turn the lights on and off. And you'll notice right now they're all given these tags that relate to the number that's here. So it used to be down here at the bottom. Not even sure. Maybe it's probably in data. Yeah, they automatically get tagged with a number, which is super confusing. So in order to avoid that, we're going to give them actual channel numbers. But so that we can see that, what we're going to do is create a legend for the light. So, and some of what I'm doing right now doesn't really have anything to do with the rendering, but those of you who are lighting designers need to know about it, and it certainly makes the rendering easier. So we're going to go to Spotlight, Label Legend Manager. We're going to add a label legend. We're going to call it generic. And all we want are the channel number we want. So we're going to click over here in the Use in 2D column. We want to use the channel, and we want it to be contained in a circle because that's the common way it's done. hopefully this is selected here. If it's not, you can pick any light, but the 19, it usually will be the last light that you used. The 19 degree is a good light to use. So, and I'll show you what that's about in a minute. So use in 2D the channel inside a circle, and as you click through this, it just keeps changing shapes. Click OK, then select this and edit the 2D layout, and you will get, that's interesting. Why is this? There. You'll get the symbol here and then the list of things that you checked over here. And since we only checked one, that's all we have. So you can drag this information over to the symbol and tell it where you want the information to be. Traditionally, the channel number goes in a circle behind the light. So that's all we're going to do for these lights. If this were a lighting design class, we would talk about putting in a bunch of other information. And you do that exactly the same way. You just check more things in that list, and then they appear over here, and you drag them over where you want them. So for those of you who are going to be taking the lighting design class later, just be aware of that. But for right now, we're just putting in the channel numbers. So we'll click exit. Then we're going to select all the lights. And in Object Info, at the bottom of the list, we're going to tell it to use legend, the only one we have, generic. So you'll see that now these lights have all been populated with the circle. We haven't given the lights any channels yet, but when we do, oh look, I forgot one, they will auto-populate. All right, so we're going to select a light, and then over in Object Info, we're going to give it a channel. So this one's going to be channel 1. This is going to be very simple. This is going to be channel 2. Oops, 2. This one's going to be channel 3. I'm going to make this 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 6, 107, 108, 109, and I'm going to make all of these 110. And the reason I'm doing that is because these are dummy rendering lights. We're not going to actually turn these lights on because we don't need them. These lights are lighting the speaker from the front, but in the rendering it looks weird that there aren't any lights on that truss, so we're going to put them there, but we're going to not turn them on so they can all be the same number. We do want to turn on 1 through 3 and 101 through 109, so if we select all those and turn them on, that's step 1. If we go to the initial perspective, turn on the chairs, see if there's anything else we need to turn on. We want to turn off the focus points. And now it seems like maybe it's a good time to adjust the camera. Although we're going to have to go back and do what we just did over again, but oh well. So we're going to select the camera here. We're going to activate the camera view. Zoom in a little bit. Fine tune the camera. So we want to see all of the truss. So we're going to look up a little bit. And we're going to adjust our focal length some. And our perspective. I'm going to narrow that. I'm going to push the camera in. Let's sort of play with this until we get it. That's too much. Seems about right. Let's see what this looks like in OpenGL. Okay, we want to set our truss to not be simple. So truss, we're going to turn simplified off. And then we can save this view as final perspective. And I'm going to do a quick rendering. Render one quick. The more lights you have in a document, the longer it takes to render. So that's why I'm doing the quick rendering. And you'll notice a couple of things that are different here than they are in this rendering. You can actually see the lenses being on in the, we forgot the stanchions too. We need to put those in. You can see the lights are on. You can see the beams of light. There's more ambient light, so we're gonna take care of those things. In order to see the beams, we have to make an adjustment to the fixture symbols themselves to turn on the lens. You would think that would automatically be on, but it's not. So we're going to go to Home. We're going to find the quantum, right click and edit the 3D component. Double click here, select this piece, which is the lens, and change the render from default instrument texture to lens color, which should be in your document. You may not get this dialog, but if you do, just use replace. That should cause... Now you'll see, that the lenses are now on. I will say that the lenses being on bears no relationship to the lights being on. You'll notice that I do not have any of the 110 lights turned on, but you can still see their lenses. So the lenses don't react to the actual light. They just light up. They're either on or off. And if they're on in the symbol, they're going to be on. They do react to the color of the light, and we're going to change the lighting color for these in a minute, but they're not responsive to whether the light is actually on or not. So that was sort of step one with the lighting there. Step two is we're going to select all of these lights and make them blue. Actually, I think in the rendering they're all blue. So select all those, and the color, you have to, for the lights, these lights, you have to give them a gel color. We're going to make them R65, Rosco 65, which is kind of a light sky blue color. So there's that. Before we move on, I want to put I forgot about the stanchions. We want to put the rope and stanchions in. So select that tool. We're just going to draw a straight line that's 10 feet long. Return, shift, return. We want the stringer to be a rope. Those bases are huge, so somewhere there's a size for a base width. Let's make that half the size, so that's 9 inches. Let's do 3D options, and the rope color is going to be gold, because UCF. And these actually were sitting right by the stage, so that right there. going to send that to the back because it should be underneath the truss. Look at it from the left-hand side, make sure it's sitting on the floor, and it is. That's good. Then we're going to mirror that to the other side. Let's see what that looks like in the final perspective, actually. Okay. Very good. Okay, the last thing we need to do for the lights is you'll notice that you can see these lights and you can see that they have a texture in them. So we need to put a gobo in these 4 lights. So we're going to go to Resource Manager and search for Breakup. You can pick anything. I think I used this one maybe. For this, the ones that are sort of less linear. The linear ones are not gonna work as well. You want something that's gonna create more texture in the air. So just right click on it and import it. And you can put it in the lighting textures folder. And then if you go to Home and Lighting Textures, right click on this and copy it. You need to type this name in exactly, and it's the easiest way to do that is just to copy it. So right click and copy, and then go back to the document and select the lights that you want to put the gobo in, those 4 lights. And over here where it says gobo 1, right click and paste. So it will insert those textures into those lights. So that's step 1 of showing the lights. Let's look now at the final perspective and do a quick render. Let's see what we have. Now that's interesting. The lights are blue, but the lenses are not blue, even though they should be. Let's see what's up with that. Home, lighting textures, lens color, right click, edit, object attribute. Okay, so that's not the problem. Let's see if we go to File, Document Settings, Spotlight Preferences. Class. The lights are set to only change the color of the part of the lights that are in the lighting lens class, and I bet the lenses are not in the lens class. So whoever built the chairs did a good job and classed them right. Whoever built these lighting objects, symbols, maybe not so much. So let's go back to here. Let's right click on our lighting object, and we're going to edit the 3D component. We're going to double click here, select the lens again, and see, yes, it is in the lighting moving light class, and it needs to be in the lighting lens class. Yes. Yes. I'll give this a minute. Now they're blue. Okay, so hopefully that made sense. Lenses, classes in Vectorworks are very powerful, but they also can be confusing sometimes. So you'll notice I'm not seeing the beams of light, and that's because I need to tell the lights to show their beams. I'm going to go to wireframe for a second, and in order to do that, if you select the lights that you want to see the beams of, so 101 and 102, right click, edit, and tell it lit fog, which means this is something that would be swell if you could do it in real life. You can tell each individual light whether to show its beam of light or not by turning the fog on basically. And really this should say haze, not fog. But so if you want to see the beam of light, you have to select lit fog, and you can do it for individual lights. It really, really, really slows down the rendering, which is why I'm only turning 4 of them on, which in reality is not makes a little bit of sense, and I'll explain why. So 101 and 102, and we're also going to turn on 108 and 109. 108 and 109, edit, lit fog. So in real life, when you have haze on and you have beams of light, you see the beams of the lights that are pointing at the audience a whole lot more than you do the beams of light that are pointing at the stage. So we really wouldn't see these beams that much anyway. So that's why those aren't on. And these 5, because there's this bright LED screen, this LED screen sort of overpowers the beams of light anyway. So it really only having these 4 on, while the main reason I did it is so that the rendering doesn't take 3 hours, it actually does sort of make physical sense anyway. So, and I think in my rendering, actually, I have the center one on as well. So that's 1, 2, 3, that's 105. So we're gonna edit that and turn the fog on. All right, getting closer. There's a second step to the turning fog process on, and it has to do with the way the light interacts with the background of the rendering. And even though we can't see the background of this rendering because we're inside an enclosed building, we still have to turn the fog on in the background. So if you go to Resource Manager and Backgrounds, we're going to edit the black background to turn the fog on. So right-click, edit, and yes, I know that. We want lit fog turned on, and 20 is usually about where I leave it, but when I tried this rendering several times earlier, I had to turn it all the way up to 100 to make it turn out the way that it does in the rendering. So turn it up to 100, but just be aware that usually that gives you these really thick cones of light and that are way too foggy. So 100 is usually not the answer, but you do generally have to play around with the number to get it to look right. And renderings, and it sort of depends on the other settings. And I think in this case, because the LED screen is so bright, that's overpowering everything, and that's why I had to turn the fog up. So lit fog, fog density of 100. Noisy looks more realistic than smooth. And you must have receive shadows checked, or the texture, the template in the light will not show up in the beam of light. Even if you have a gobo, a texture in the light, if you don't have receive shadows turned on, the beam of light will just be a solid beam and will not reflect the texture unless you have receive shadows turned on. So after you've done that, then you need to go to RenderWorks Styles. Right-click that. We're going to use the final render, but we're going to edit it. So edit. And we're going to make 2 changes. The background, we want to change the background now to the black background, which we just edited, that has the fog on. That's number 1. And then lighting, we're going to change the color of the ambient light to more of a light blue. So somewhere along in there, and we're going to pump it up to 30. Okay. And for a quick render, let's go ahead and change that as well. I'm going to change that to black. And we're going to change the lighting color to here and pump that up to 30. Okay. So now, it seems like a good time to save. We've got the appropriate lights turned on. We have the fog turned on the lights we want to see. We've had the texture inserted. We've fixed the background. So now we're going to do a quick render, which may not be that quick. Okay, so that tells me a couple of things. First of all, my ceiling is too bright and the lights are really dark. So I'm going to make a change. The first thing, we're going to go to top view and then to front view and select the ceiling and change it to be 60% gray. And then we're also going to change the default instrument texture on the lights so that they're not quite so dark. So back to home, there should be in the lighting textures, default instrument texture, right click, edit, and we're going to change this color to 60% gray. This seems to be my number today. Okay. And I just want this, so now we're going to go to the final perspective. I just want to double check that ambient light is turned on in my RenderWorks styles. On 30. Bump this up to 50. And I'm also going to do the same thing here. All right, then we're going to run, now I'm going to save. And we're going to run the quick render one more time. The final render will take a while. When I did the last one, it was about a 20-minute render for me, so it may be a long render for some of you. And some of you are not going to be able to render it. Your machines are just not going to do it. So that, it is what it is. If you can render it, great. If you can't, render what you can and turn in the Vectorworks file as well. And I'll take a look at the rendering. Okay, that looks pretty good. I think I may have turned the, well, maybe not. I was going to say I may have turned the ambient light up too much, but I think we're gonna say that's okay. I do feel like the lights are not quite spread out as much as I'd like them for them to be, so I'm going to go back and change the height of the focus point object. I'm going to change the height of B from 0 to 24, so they're actually hitting the stage floor. And that should be good. So I'm going to go back in the final perspective. I'm not going to do the, well, actually, yes, I am. Just one more time, just because it takes the final render so long, I want to make sure that everything is set before I do the final render. Okay, that all looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and commit to a final render. So we're going to, I'm going to go ahead and put this in wireframe. I'm going to create a viewport. Select the viewport, put it in RenderWorks style final. If you've been having problems rendering other things, you're definitely not going to be able to render this. So if you already know in advance, try setting it to the quick render that we just adjusted to see if that will work. And basically, the difference between the quick, the working, and the final is the settings where you can set things to low, medium, high, or very high. Stuff is set to high or very high, and final is sort of set in the medium and working, and is set to low and quick. That's what the big difference is. Then I'm also going to edit my sheet layer to be 150 dpi. You don't want to do this if you're having rendering issues, because this will slow it down twice as much. Okay, so that's all set. So I'm going to save one more time just to make sure it doesn't crash, and then start the update. Okay, and a short 25 minutes later, there's the final rendering. So if you're able to do that, great. If you're not, do the best you can. Save this as a PDF and turn it in. And also remember that this is the last of the Follow BERT projects for the grad students. After this week, you should start working on your Choose Your Own Adventure final project. So let me know soonish what you're planning on doing for that. For the undergrads, we have 2 more projects where we're going to model theaters. The Orlando Rep and the Black Box here, and then your final project will be taking one of those spaces and putting something in it. So good luck with this week's project. I'll look forward to hearing what the grads projects are going to be for the final, and I will see the undergrads virtually, of course, next week.